and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello, and welcome back to Mackey's Shiny Side Out. That's what this is, Shiny Side Out, referring to aluminium foil, as in a tin head, tin foil head, yes, tin head, tin foil head, and if the shiny side goes out, that's, in case you didn't know, that's what that means. This is show 667, 760, and 600. Just one bigger than the number of the beast, and we didn't really make fun of ourselves, but we might do it in retrospect. Important message. This is listener funded radio, so if you can donate, please do. If you can't, that's okay, because it's tough out there. Please go ahead and tell people about the station, about our shows, Shiny Side Out and Plato's Cave, other show hosts and other shows, of course, as well, if you like. No question about that. But it's important that the word gets out there, because if more people know, more people listen, and then more people can donate, which is really the name of the game. Alrighty. Now, this was a very interesting conversation we had in the first half, but we're back to human medical experiments. Of course, we're focusing on the ones where the humans did not give their consent, didn't have any information about what's happening to them, and in most cases didn't even know they were part of an experiment.
That's
and
right.
That led to...
How can you give informed consent if you're not told you're part of something like that?
And that's just nuts, right, if you think about it for a second. I mean, it's just insanity times 2. Squared, cubed even. No, look. And these experiments led to injury, serious injury, and death in a lot of cases, in fact. And I would like you to realize 2 things. So number 1, this is important. This is information that is publicly available, and we have not given you everything here that we found in our research, because I think, honestly, that would be too much, but that's just my opinion. And also, it's even what we give you is quite disturbing, and it might be upsetting to someone. So please be advised. This is the warning, right, that you're getting here. There's upsetting information here, and none of it is made up, because again, this is publicly available information. Governments have acknowledged it. People have gone to jail for it. Okay, this actually happened. And secondly, it is still happening. See, we like to think of these things that happen in the, we like to think of them as in the past. Now, we like to think of genocide as something that, there's no more genocide today. Doesn't happen. Well, maybe not on the industrial scale that Germany achieved, but it certainly happens. And I don't know if you would call the starvation death of millions of people, especially in Africa, genocide or not. I probably would, especially because there's enough food in the world to not have these people starve. So, so it's all a matter of perspective, definition, and then also, I guess, historical insight. Right? These are important factors. But be mindful that what has happened in the past is happening today and is likely to happen into the future until such a time when we as a people decide it is no longer acceptable. And this is an interesting point, Dave, and I want you, before we go into the text, I want your opinion on this. We have a lot of organizations, Dave, that are fighting animal testing. For cosmetics, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's not but there is no organization that I know of. I'm not talking about human rights organizations now. Amnesty International, they have a wider remit. Sorry?
PETA.
That's the animal rights guy. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
but there's no organization that has made it its mandate to stop human medical experimentation.
Oh, there's a point.
Okay, not one. Okay, as part of a wider remit, you could argue, oh, but here, okay, no, okay, I dig it. That's fair. But there's no single organization on the planet that has said it is my mandate to ensure that human medical experiments no longer happen. Okay, just I want you to think about that for a second and ask yourself why that is as well. Okay, so this is the advisory. This is the warning as well, and also the cautionary comment around. It is happening. It will continue to happen. It may be happening to you. You don't know. It may be happening to you. I'm not saying it is, but it could. It could be happening to your kids. Because the point that we're trying to make is it happened to people and they did not know. They didn't know. And it was usually the weak and the helpless and the undefended, the orphans and the mentally handicapped, prisoners, etc., that would be subject of these experiments. Okay, but just think about that, please, everybody. Because this is not just stuff Dave and I talk about and read off a page. This is real stuff. This is life. Yeah. As you can see, it's one of my pet things because I find it unconscionable that we have institutions even out there that take advantage of the weak and undefended. Anyway,
I have
off
my
you go,
pet
Dave.
peeve locked away in a cage.
I can't help myself.
I feed it occasionally. So, let's start with Operation Top Hat.
Yes.
If you didn't know what that was, you soon will. In June 1953, the United States Army formally adopted guidelines regarding the use of human subjects in chemical, biological, or radiological testing and research, where authorization from the Secretary of the Army was now required for all research projects involving human subjects. Under the guidelines, 7 research projects involving chemical weapons and human subjects were submitted by the Chemical Corps for Secretary of the Army approval in August of 1953. One project involved vesicants, one involved phosgene, and 5 were experiments which involved nerve agents. All 7 were approved. The guidelines, however, left a loophole. They did not define what types of experiments and tests required such approval from the Secretary. Operation Top Hat was among the numerous projects not submitted for approval. It was termed a local field exercise. This just makes it sound so good, doesn't it? That was
special
done.
military operation.
That special military over there by the Army, and took place from September 15th to the 19th, 1953, at the Army Chemical School at Fort McClellan, Alabama. I think that might have been a giveaway. The experiments used Chemical Corps personnel to test decontamination methods for biological and chemical weapons, including sulfur, mustard, and nerve agents. The personnel were deliberately exposed to these contaminants, were not volunteers, and were not informed of the tests. In a 1975 Pentagon Inspector General's report, the military maintained that Operation Top Hat was not subject to the guidelines requiring approval because it was a line of duty exercise in the Chemical Corps.
Oh my God! You know what that means, right? It's like, oh no, you have to do this because you sign up to the service. No,
that's right.
Now, this is several steps beyond putting someone in harm's way. Now, if you're a soldier, you sign up to certain realities, right? Yeah, you do, because I mean, you could get killed in line of service, right? And hopefully you're aware of this, and that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's the job, right? It's the job. What is not the job is to be, subjected to a whole bunch of, harmful agents, whatever they are, to see what would happen, because you're not fighting an enemy. right? I mean, these are our own soldiers, our people that we test this on. And you know what, Dave?
What's that?
I know this is going to sound... This is not part of the text. This is my opinion here now, okay?
Yes.
I smell Nazi scientists all over this kind of stuff.
Yeah, huh?
That's what I do. That's what I smell. Because the thing is this, these Nazi scientists from Germany, well, these are not their people. These are Americans. They don't care. You understand what I'm saying here? These Nazi scientists, which were brought across as Operation Paperclip, you know, Russia, well, again, Russians didn't bother calling it anything. They just grabbed them. Come over here! And, yeah, essentially, well, we tried to kill all the Americans, and now I can experiment with them. Hurrah! Sieg Heil! Sieg Heil! Do watch Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About the Bomb. Dr. Strangelove. Peter Sellers is doing a fantastic job in that movie, and I like to look at it as a documentary rather than a movie, to be honest with you. Okay, which brings us to the Holmesburg program. Now, there's a picture here of a man with a horrible rash. It's called cloacne, and this is from exposure to dioxins. You know, dreadful. The picture is just, it looks like
I know.
The skin of a gherkin, a pickled gherkin. That's what it looks like.
Good
anyway,
grief. From
approximately 1951 to 1974, 23 years. Good Lord. The Holmesburg prison in Pennsylvania was the site of extensive dermatological research operations, using prisoners as subjects, led by Dr. Albert M. Kligman of the University of Pennsylvania. The studies were performed on behalf of Dow Chemical Company, the U.S. Army, and Johnson & Johnson. Dow Chemical wanted to study the health effects of dioxin and other herbicides to discover how they affect human skin, because workers at its chemical plants were developing cloacne. In the study, Kligman applied about the same amount of dioxin as that to which Dow employees were being exposed. In 1980 and 1981, some of the people who were used in the study sued Kligman because they were suffering from a variety of health problems, including lupus and psychological damage. Kligman later continued his dioxin studies, increasing the dosage of dioxin, which he applied to the skin of 10 prisoners, to 7,500 micrograms of dioxin, which is 468 times the dosage that the Dow Chemical official Gerald K. Rowe had authorized him to administer. Almost 500 times more. As a result, the prisoners developed inflammatory pustules and papules. So, like, you know,
for some reason.
Things.
Yeah.
The Holmesburg program paid hundreds of inmates a nominal stipend to test a wide range of cosmetic products and chemical compounds whose health effects were unknown at the time, until animals became easier to test, I guess. Upon his arrival at Holmesburg, Kligman is claimed to have said, this is his quote, "All I saw before me were acres of skin. It was like a farmer seeing a fertile field for the first time." A 1964 issue of Medical News reported that 9 out of the 10 prisoners at Holmesburg prison were medical test subjects. 90% of the prison population at that prison were test subjects. 90%. In 1967, the U.S. Army paid Kligman to apply skin blistering chemicals to the faces and backs of inmates at Holmesburg. In Kligman's words, to learn how the skin protects itself against chronic assault from toxic chemicals, the so-called hardening process.
That's so bad. I'm sorry if it's shocking people. I'm just going to apologize again. This is all available on Wikipedia. That's our source for all of this. It's been peer-reviewed, and it is a public source of information. We haven't received any documents from anyone. No whistleblowers, nothing. This is all public. All right. Psychological and torture experiments. U.S. government research. The United States government funded and performed numerous psychological experiments, including during the Cold War era. Many of these experiments were performed to help develop more effective torture and interrogation techniques for the US military and intelligence agencies, and to develop techniques for Americans to resist torture at the hands of enemy nations and organizations. Truth serum. Now, I'm sure if you've seen any even True Lies that was in there, or it was in Maxwell Smart. It's rated G TV shows, right? And it was always talked about. It was always something about a truth serum somewhere, some research, whatever. US interest in developing a truth serum began in 1943 when the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, began experimenting with a truth drug that would produce uninhibited truthfulness in an interrogated person. In studies running from 1947 to 1953, which were known as Project Chatter, the US Navy began identifying and testing truth serums, which they hoped could be used during interrogations of Soviet spies. Some of the chemicals tested on subjects, or human subjects, included mescaline and the anticholinergic drug scopolamine. Shortly thereafter, in 1950, the CIA initiated Project Bluebird. Oh, it just doesn't sound good at all, this one. Later renamed Project Artichoke, directed by Army General Paul F. Gaynor. The purpose of the project was to develop, and in quotes, the means to control individuals through special interrogation techniques, unquote, and then ways to prevent the extraction of information from CIA agents and offensive uses of unconventional techniques such as hypnosis and drugs. The purpose of the project was outlined in a memo dated January 1952 that stated, quote, "Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his own will, against his will, and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation," unquote. The project studied the use of hypnosis, forced morphine addiction, and subsequent forced withdrawal, and the use of other chemicals, among other methods, to produce amnesia and other vulnerable states in subjects. In order to perfect techniques for the abstraction of information from individuals, whether willing or not, Project Bluebird researchers experimented with a wide variety of psychoactive substances, including LSD, heroin, marijuana, cocaine, PCP, mescaline, and ether. Project Bluebird, researchers dosed over 7,000 US military personnel with LSD without their knowledge or consent at the Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland. And I remember seeing them being sprayed with LSD from a plane, like a B-52 sprayer. Like crop dusting. Years after these experiments, more than 1,000 of these soldiers suffered from several illnesses, including depression and epilepsy. Many of them attempted suicide. Meki. I'll read this. So, drug deaths. In 1952, professional tennis player Harold Blair died when he was injected with a fatal dose of MDA at the New York State Psychiatric Institute of Columbia University. The United States Department of Defense, which sponsored the injection. Hang on, let me read that again. The United States Department of Defense, which sponsored the injection, worked in collusion with the Department of Justice and the New York State Attorney General to conceal evidence of its involvement in the experiment for 23 years. Cattle claimed that he did not know what the army had ordered him to inject into Blair, saying, quote, "We didn't know whether it was dog piss or what we were giving him," unquote. On November 19, 1953, Dr. Frank Olson was given a dosage of LSD without his knowledge or consent after falling from a hotel window 9 days later. He died under suspicious circumstances until the Project MK Ultra revelations. The cause of Olson's death was covered up for 22 years. I'm just showing a screenshot of that.
Yeah, good man.
That is nuts.
Now, just on this, and this is what
It's very KGB.
It's just saying.
Slippery floors and open windows.
Oh, that's what we love. You know, gotta buff those floors to a shiny shine. No, but Dave, our listeners as well, I want you to think about something here. Dave just talked about the truth serum and the ability to use drugs, etc., in interrogation and all this. So my question is this, and apparently truth serum is fairly effective. Right? They've got a new one now. I forget the chemical name for it now. It'll come to me. Yeah, I think that's right. Exactly, thank you. So why then are we seeing, well, not anymore, but why did we see all those pictures and videos of torture at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay? What's the point? If I can chemically induce my subject to tell me the truth, why would I torture them?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
well,
okay,
the fun of it.
The fun of it. Yeah, well, maybe, and maybe it's a method of terror as well for other prisoners. But I would say that maybe some people are immune to chemical manipulation. Let's say that's true, right? It'd probably be a small percentage, but the levels of torture that went on is mind-boggling, right? So, to your point, maybe it is done for fun. Maybe it's done for terror reasons. Maybe it's done because of their other nefarious purposes that we are not aware of.
Yeah.
Because you have to always ask yourself, why is something happening? Okay, it's happening, here it is, but why? Now, if it is information extraction, right, if that's the answer, you go, okay, but why then not use truth serums?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why not do that? Oh, plus, it has been proven, there are actually many studies now, that essentially have proven that someone that is being tortured will say pretty much anything.
That's right.
They'll tell you whatever you want to hear. And if they don't know something, they'll make it up, which is worse than no information.
Because you're not getting anything good out of it. That's right.
Yeah. So, and the thing is this, nobody is immune to torture. Everybody will talk about everything at some point. I don't care how tough you are. But the chemical shortcut here, I don't understand what physical torture can accomplish unless there's another purpose for the physical torture. Whatever that might be, I don't know, right? I'm just saying it out loud here, speculating, because there are other ways to get to this. And we now have machines, as you know, and patents for machines that manipulate you without any chemicals. We're talking about electromagnetic frequencies here now, okay? So that's a whole different thing.
What's the tried and true, you know, getting not catfished, but I suppose, though I know there was a term for it where a beautiful woman would seduce you and get you to talk,
Yeah.
but out in a field where you didn't think you were, you know, encountering it.
Yeah, I forget
There's a term for
at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's essentially you know, using a sex and your, well, look, whatever your weakness is, really, whatever.
Yeah,
your
that's right.
is, they'll get you. And that's, see, the funny thing is this, in my work, a lot of my people need to be security cleared because we work for the government, right? And they call me, you know, ask me questions about my people as well. But the thing is not to find out stuff about you, you know, to make your life hard or to deny you access.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make sure they know everything about you so that it can't be used against you.
That you can't be You
right?
can't be threatened with that release
Yeah.
of information. Yeah.
They don't care if you've got a mistress or 5, or if you take drugs, or if you gamble.
That's right.
They don't care.
Mhm.
They actually don't care. What they care about is how much of that stuff can be used as leverage against you. That's what they care about.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the truth.
That's what they care about. So just to be clear. Now, talk about this human experimentation and so forth, and and mind control now, which is what we're getting into right now. So we had the truth serum, which was a chemical. Now, mind control will cover the entire spectrum, and this is MK Ultra, of everything we've discussed in order to facilitate a certain outcome. Now, MK Ultra is a real thing. For a long time, it was just, and this is to Dave's point from earlier. What are the debunkers doing now, right?
That's
when,
right.
When it's been proven. And the funny thing is this, Dave. I still get people that want to argue with me about things that have been disclosed.
That's right.
I said I don't want to talk to you anymore. Why? Because this has been disclosed as a fact.
Yeah,
It is not my opinion. This is now
No.
a verifiable fact. Go ahead.
that's right.
Oh no, it can't be. Blah blah blah. It's conspiracy this and blah blah blah. And I go, oh, okay,
It just
You
sounds
win.
like you don't want to believe it. I'm
No.
sure.
but it's okay.
I
It's
wish
all
it
right.
weren't
It's
true.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we all do. But ultimately, a lot of the, and again, we labor under the assumption that this is a thing of the past. It is not a thing of the past. It is happening right now. Whatever we're talking about here, that it's happening to someone somewhere, today, and tomorrow.
hmm
Anyway, MK Ultra. And and I spent a lot of time on the FOI sites, FOIA I should say, and there's this lots of documents. Some are less redacted than others, so it's just like it's luck of the draw what you find. So Project MK Ultra was a human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, the child of the OSS, to develop procedures and identify drugs used during interrogations to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. The term MK Ultra is the CIA cryptonym. MK is an arbitrary prefix standing for the Office of Technical Service, and Ultra is an arbitrary word out of a dictionary to denominate this project. Project MK Ultra began in 1953 and was, and I'm adding allegedly here, halted in 1973. MK Ultra used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects, mental states and brain functions, such as the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs, especially LSD, and other chemicals without the subject's consent. Additionally, other methods beyond chemical compounds were used, including electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. Project MK Ultra was preceded by Project Artichoke. It was organized through the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence and coordinated with the United States Army Biological Warfare Laboratories. The program engaged in illegal activities, including the use of US and Canadian citizens as unwitting test subjects. Speak no consent. MK Ultra's scope was broad, with activities carried out under the guise of research at more than 80 institutions aside from the military, including, and this is important, colleges, universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. The CIA operated using front organizations, although some top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement. Project MK Ultra was revealed to the public in 1975 by the Church Committee, named after Senator Frank Church of the United States Congress, and Gerald Ford's United States President's Commission on CIA Activities within the United States, the Rockefeller Commission. Can we really trust these people? Investigative efforts were hampered by CIA Director Richard Helms' order. They were hampered by his order that all MK Ultra files be destroyed in 1973. The Church Committee and Rockefeller Commission investigations relied on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the small number of documents that survived Helms' order. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered a cache of 20,000 documents relating to MK Ultra, which led to Senate hearings. some surviving information about MKUltra was declassified in 2001. So 20,000 documents actually survived. Imagine how many they destroyed. Now, two things. One, the Jason Bourne movies. That's actually MKUltra. Okay?
Yeah.
You want to know what that actually looks like in reality?
Look
at the Jason Bourne movies. Okay. Two, I don't think it stopped in 1975.
Oh no.
Okay. Just my opinion.
They could have renamed the project officially.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
100%.
What? Was it?
What?
That was
Who
across
said
the
that?
line, I'm sure.
Why don't you tell us about the origin? That this goes to my earlier point, by the way. But go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, thanks. That's good. Yeah. Talk about it now. Background origin of the project. During the early 1940s, Nazi scientists working on the concentration camps of Auschwitz and Dachau conducted interrogation experiments on human subjects. Substances such as barbiturates, morphine derivatives, and hallucinogens such as mescaline were employed in experiments conducted by Polish, Czech, Jewish, Soviet, and other nationalities, prisoners of war. They aimed to develop a truth serum which would, in the words of one laboratory assistant to Dachau scientist Kurt Plotner, quote, eliminate the will of the person examined, unquote. American historian Stephen Kinzer argues that the CIA project was a continuation, in air quotes, of these earlier Nazi experiments, citing the numerous German scientists who were hired to work for the US as part of Operation Paperclip, as Mecki mentioned earlier. American interest in drug-related interrogation experiments began in 1943 when the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, began developing a truth drug that would produce uninhibited truthfulness in an interrogated person. Wow. In 1947, the United States Navy initiated Project Chatter, an interrogation project which saw the first testing of LSD on human subjects. In 1950, the Central Intelligence Agency, under the direction of General Walter Bedell Smith, initiated a series of interrogation projects involving human subjects, beginning with the launch of Project Bluebird, officially renamed Project Artichoke on August 20th, 1951. Directed and overseen by Brigadier General Paul F. Gaynor, the objective of Artichoke was to determine whether an individual could be made to involuntarily perform an act of attempted assassination. Morphine, mescaline, and LSD were all administered on unknowing CIA agents in an attempt to produce amnesia in the subjects. In addition, Project Artichoke aimed to employ certain viruses, such as dengue fever, as potential incapacitating agents. And I'm just going to take a little shot here of the aims and leadership. It's heavily redacted and the resolution isn't very good, but there it is. And there's a heading or a subject below, and it says Sidney Gottlieb approved of MKUltra sub-project on LSD in this June 9th, 1953 letter. The project was headed by Sidney Gottlieb, but began on the order of CIA Director Alan Dulles on April 13th, 1953. Its aim was to develop mind-controlling drugs for use against the Soviet bloc in response to alleged Soviet and North Korean use of mind control techniques on US prisoners of war during the Korean War. The CIA wanted to use similar methods in their own captives and was interested in manipulating foreign leaders with such techniques devising several schemes to drug Fidel Castro. It often conducted experiments without the subject's knowledge and/or consent. In some cases, academic researchers were funded through grants from CIA front organizations, but were unaware that the CIA was using their work for these purposes. The project attempted to produce a perfect truth serum for interrogating suspect Soviet spies during the Cold War and to explore the possibilities of mind control. Sub-Project 54 was the Navy's top secret perfect concussion program, which was supposed to use suboral frequency blasts to erase memory. The program was never carried out. Well, let's call that officially. Most MK Ultra records were destroyed in 1973 by order of CIA Director Richard Helms, so it has been difficult for investigators to gain a complete understanding of the more than 150 funded research sub-projects sponsored by MK Ultra and related to CIA programs. The project began during a period of what English journalist Rupert Cornwell described as paranoia at the CIA, when the US had lost its nuclear monopoly and the fear of communism was at its height. CIA counterintelligence chief James Jesus Angleton believed that a mole had penetrated the organization at the highest levels. You know, you're not paranoid if they're really after you.
That's right, baby.
You know it. The agency poured millions of dollars into studies examining ways to influence and control the mind and enhance its ability to extract information from resistant subjects during interrogation. Some historians assert that one goal of MKUltra and related CIA projects was to create a Manchurian Candidate-styled subject. American historian Alfred W. McCoy has claimed that the CIA attempted to focus media attention on these sorts of ridiculous programs so that the public would not look at the research's primary goal, which was effective methods of interrogation. Mekki.
Yeah, it's see, the question here is, does the end justify the means, right?
Sure.
This is always the question when it comes to this, right? And the answer is, it cannot.
Oh.
It cannot.
I thought I was onto something then for a minute.
It cannot, or should not. I mean, of course, they will say otherwise, and they say, oh, no, look, we got all this stuff, and that's how we got there. Again, that's a discussion we're going to have at the end of all of this. Number one, is it really worth doing whatever it takes to get the information, and then should we be using the information, no matter how we got it? Right? That's really the question here. It's a moral and ethical dilemma, and people that are realists will say, of course we can use it. What are you doing? Crazy fool! Don't talk philosophy.
That's what I'm saying.
How much cake can you buy with philosophy, Dave? Huh?
All of it.
None. No cake.
None.
Yeah, sorry, brother. No cake with philosophy. Philosophy students work at McDonald's. Applications of MKUltra. The 1976 Church Committee report found that in the MK Delta program, drugs were used primarily as an aid to interrogation, but MKUltra and MK Delta materials were also used for harassment, discrediting, or disabling purposes. Other related projects were: in 1964, MK Search was the name given to the continuation of the MKUltra program. The MK Search program was divided into two projects, dubbed MK Often and MK Chickwit. Sounds like a McDonald's Happy Meal, doesn't it? Funding for Mac Search, MK Search rather, Mac Search. Mac Search. Funding for MK Search commenced in 1965 and ended in 1971. The program was a joint project between the U.S. Army Chemical Corps and the CIA's Office of Research and Development to find new offensive use agents with a focus on incapacitating agents. Its purpose was to develop, test, and evaluate capabilities in the covert use of biological, chemical, and radioactive materials systems and techniques of producing predictable human behavioral and/or physiological changes in support of highly sensitive operational requirements, maybe even super soldiers. By March 71, over 26,000 potential agents had been acquired for future screening. The CIA was interested in bird migration patterns for chemical and biological warfare research. Sub-Project 139 designated bird disease studies at Pennsylvania State University. MK Ultra was to deal with testing and toxicological transmissivity and behavioral effects of drugs in animals and ultimately humans. MK Chickwit was concerned with acquiring information on new drug developments in Europe and Asia and with acquiring samples thereof. In January 1957, the CIA started a sub-project of MK Ultra in an effort to broaden their scientific research. Sub-Project 68, conducted at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal under the direction of psychiatrist Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, represents one of the most infamous and ethically controversial endeavors within the MK Ultra program. This sub-project aims to explore innovative techniques for manipulating and controlling human behavior, particularly through the methods of psychic driving and deep-patterning. Psychic driving involved subjecting patients to continuous playback of recorded messages, often with themes of self-improvement or identity reinforcement, while they were under the influence of powerful psychoactive substances such as LSD or barbiturates.
Wow. You know, I think they got it down. Whatever it was, I think they did. I think they perfected that. Now,
good job.
Experiments on Americans. CIA documents suggest that they investigated chemical, biological, and radiological methods of mind control as part of MK Ultra. They spent an estimated $10 million at the time, or more, roughly 8 to 87.5 million adjusted for inflation. During a hearing by the Senate Health Subcommittee, a testimony by the Deputy Director of the CIA stated that over 30 institutions and universities were involved in the experimentation program of testing drugs on unknowing citizens. And then there's a quote here. It says, at all social levels, high and low, Native Americans and foreign, unquote. Several of these tests involved the issuing of LSD to unaware subjects in social situations. The Army was subject to the testing of LSD, which occurred in 3 phases. The first phase included over 1,000 American soldiers who willingly volunteered for testing of chemical warfare experiments. Phase 2 had 96 volunteers who were induced with LSD in evaluation of the possibility of intelligence uses of the drug. The third phase included projects Third Chance and Derby Hat, which conducted experiments on 16 unwitting, non-volunteer subjects that after receiving LSD were interrogated as a part of Operation Field Tests. That means, if you remember, that didn't require any approval. After retiring in 1972, Gottlieb dismissed his entire effort for the CIA's MK Ultra program as useless. Files discovered in 1977 containing 700 pages of new information showed that experiments had continued until Gottlieb ordered the program halted on July 10th, 1972.
Yep, LSD. In 1938, LSD was created by Albert Hofmann at the Sandoz laboratories in Basel, Switzerland. The early directors of MK Ultra became aware of the existence of LSD and sought to use it for mind control. In the early 1950s, MK Ultra director Sidney Gottlieb arranged for the CIA to buy the entire supply of LSD for $240,000, which in 2024 would be about $4.5 million. This LSD supply gave Gottlieb the ability to fulfill his experiment by spreading LSD to prisons, hospitals, institutions, clinics, and foundations in order to see how citizens would react to the drug without knowing exactly what was happening to them. Early CIA efforts focused on LSD-25, which later came to dominate. That's the one which later came to dominate many of MK Ultra's programs. The CIA wanted to know if they could make Soviet spies defect against their will and whether the Soviets could do the same to the CIA's own operatives. Documents obtained from the CIA by John D. Marks under Freedom of Information in 1976 showed that, in 1953, the CIA considered purchasing 10 kilograms of LSD, enough for 100 million doses.
Yeah.
The proposed purchase aimed to stop other countries from controlling the supply. The documents showed that the CIA purchased some quantities of LSD from Sandoz laboratories in Switzerland. If they purchase all of it, they're just going to make more. Because, I mean, you know, if someone buys all my stuff, I guess you're going to make more. Let's make
That's
more.
Right. Let's hope those orders continue.
Yes, so weak bananas.
I'm beginning to think that this is just my own comment here. I'm beginning to think that Gottlieb was interested in enjoying the effects of it. He's buying so much, it doesn't seem to me that it would be all on experiments. That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's party time at Gottlieb's house, baby. The roof is on fire. I don't know what this is. It doesn't look like fire. It's psychedelic, man.
So for those who don't understand, a milligram. So if you were to, from all the research that I've been able to ascertain, you get a pin and put it into the liquid, and that single droplet that's there on the head of the pin, or the pointed of the pin, is enough as a dose.
Oh, that'll do you.
You've got to think about it. If you've got tons of this stuff, what are you doing with it?
What would I do with it? Huh? What would I do? Come on, baby.
Maybe is. I don't know. I just don't know. I'm at a loss.
Don't worry, baby. We're gonna find you. Yeah, you won't be lost no more, baby.
What was that joke, Becky? What was that joke from Flying High, or if you're in America, the movie Airplane, where the guy's sitting there and his wife said, "Do you remember that time you took all the acid and you thought you were Jesus and you could fly and you jumped off the roof?" And he looks blankly at her and goes, "Bummer." He doesn't remember anything.
I don't remember that one. That's hilarious, though.
It's a very funny scene.
Oh, brother. No, but it's a serious drug. You can stand on your head.
We don't condone the use of drugs, by the way. Just letting you know.
No, of course not. I mean, look, hey, everybody's an individual and everybody's free to do whatever they like. All I will caution you, and I've got some cautionary tales in my life, and I need to say this at this point, I think, because we talk about this a lot. I know people that were extremely negatively affected by drugs.
Yes.
Super negatively affected.
If you call it permanently affected, that's a good way of
I would talk to the point where they killed somebody and are now sitting in a psychiatric prison kind of thing.
Wow.
Okay? One dose of whatever they took was enough to completely derail their life. Now, I've met people that suffered from drug-induced psychosis, and it's scary. It's scary. Look, I know I'm going to sound like an old fogey, but just say no. It's my opinion, and it's my advice to you. Hey, I enjoy a beer. I enjoy a glass of wine. You know, I used to smoke, don't anymore. I enjoy, like a gin and tonic once in a while, and I know what my limits are. But with drugs, especially if you don't know where you're getting them from, you never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get. Even with alcohol these days, you might have seen what happened in both
that's
in
Cambodia, I think it was. It's not a substitute.
In Fiji. Yeah, that stuff will kill you. Quick
it does.
And I looked up what it does, and it's horrific.
Yeah, it shuts down everything you've got.
Yeah. So look, please, stay away from from these drugs. It's especially the synthesized, the artificial drugs. They're really bad. Anything refined, but anything that makes something else stronger is not good.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it starts as opium, and the milk of the poppy, opium, is then refined into heroin, and obviously cocaine starts out as something, then it's cooked and turns to crack cocaine. These are all bad things.
Mm-hmm.
These are bad things. And the funny thing is this, Dave, and I know we're sort of slightly off topic here, but it's important. Right. We need to understand what makes people take drugs, right? Especially drugs like that. Is it escape? Is it an unhappiness in their life? I mean, it could be any of those things, right? It could be peer pressure as well. I hope it's not, because that's the most stupid of all the reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand why people take performance-enhancing drugs. Now, I don't condone that either, but I get it. I used to work out a lot when I was younger at the gym, and I never took any drugs. I took a couple of vitamin B shots. That's about the extent of my drug taking. But I'm not a big needles fan, right? So I stopped that as well. But I know people that took, all kinds of steroids, and that's okay. I mean, that's up to them. Do what you need to do. But it's funny when you take these performance-enhancing drugs. That effect only lasts so long,
mm-hmm.
and unless you have the discipline, if you're an athlete and you don't have the discipline to train and do the right thing, eat right, train right, rest right, no drug in the world is going to make you better.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, no drug in the world is going to make you better in the long run. You must have that natural talent and the natural discipline. Okay? If you don't have any of that and you take the drugs, they'll make you big. I've seen people that in 6 weeks
mm-hmm.
became enormous on drugs. They weren't any stronger than me, mind you. Right? In fact, in many cases, they were weaker than me. But they were bigger because their muscles returned more fluid, and so they became quite large. But seriously, any kind of drug taking, the shiny side out strongly discourages.
That's right. Agreed.
Too many horror stories, and I've been in the rave scene in Sydney, and Dave has had his experiences. He can tell you about those, but I can tell you there's some real horror stories out there, and they're cautionary tales, and they're not that uncommon either. It's not like, oh, it won't happen to me, and then all of a sudden it does, right? So, yeah. But it's important to understand, and that's why I'm even more upset at these governmental. Well, could you call them government really? Not really. I guess they're more like a bureaucracy, right? Like an intelligence bureaucracy. That's what this is. Using these drugs on unwitting subjects. Now, if you make a choice to take a drug, that's on you. That's on you, okay? And if you make that choice, but these people had no choice, Dave.
They didn't even
know.
They
had no choice.
That would be totally frightening.
Imagine. I mean, I know what the effects of LSD are, mm-hmm. and I've never taken it, but I've heard the reports and seen documentaries. If you took it unknowingly,
yeah,
you would think you have gone insane.
Totally. That's what
Right?
I'm in shock that you would, someone would even contemplate doing that to somebody. It would be horrifying. It would be totally horrifying to have to go through that and not know the reason why.
Yeah.
Now, what have they got? So the claims are that they've, suffered all manner of things, no less, PTSD from it.
Yeah. Now think about it for a second now about the people that devised these protocols, that devised mm-hmm. these studies, that made the decision to actually do this. Just think about that for a second. Mm-hmm. Think about the state of mind you have to be in to subject your fellow human beings to things like this. Now, self-experimentation, you can't stop. I mean, if a scientist wants to do something, I mean, as Timothy Leary, I think, he experimented himself
mm-hmm.
Significantly, in fact. And others have as well. And look,
there are thoughts that he might have been part of the program.
Yeah, and probably he was. I would say he was at least consulted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But oh no. Well, look, don't take drugs.
Look, I'm going to say this is the end of the second hour, and coming up next, not sure, could be Jay Bear and his awesome show. We're going to catch you 7 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday next week, I think, if if it's not already shut for general programming. So what are we saying, Andy? What do we advise people?
Be safe!